Hey, what's up you guys, this is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Snapshot, it's all about sucking in enemy projectiles when we take a look at Mag's Magnetize. Okay, so this is not going to be a normal quick snapshot, because there is a lot to talk about here. So DK has been on a bit of a mag spree lately as he has fallen deeply in love with Magnetize. On his last few videos, it's been Magnetize this, Magnetize that, and I'm like, ugh. Fuck, I should probably do some research on it. Now, a little bit of background on my relationship with Mag. As with most women, I had no interest in playing with her whatsoever. The only potential I ever saw in Mag was spamming Polarize against the Corpus, or the Corrupted, but only when we were running a full squad of Corrosive Projection. So when the rework came along, I definitely bit my tongue. However, after diving headfirst into hours upon hours of research, I have to admit, I think she's in a better place than a lot of people realize. Now, I hit up the wiki, watched a couple of videos on the net, particularly one by a very angry young man that, while it was filled with some awesome information, trashed one or several YouTubers. I'm gonna assume that doesn't include me because number one, my name was not plastered all over the comments like somebody else's was, and number two, y'all know I test my shit. Speaking of, let's take a look at what inspired me to delve deeper. I decided to jump into a casual solo void survival and get my bearings with Magnetize, only to find this. Okay, so that result is a bit hyperbolic, but that's when it dawned upon me. Everyone spent so much time complaining that Mag's Polarize no longer scaled, but no one has given much credit to the fact that Magnetize scales. Now, I can't necessarily blame the general community for not giving the rework the credit it deserves, because realistically, Magnetize is one mechanically complicated ability, combining aspects of Robon's Vortex, Nyx's Absorb, and Nova's Molecular Prime. Simplified, when you cast Magnetize on an enemy, it will root them in place and create a gravitational field around them, pulling in any weapon fire that passes through the field, absorbing 25% of the incoming damage, as well as slowly sucking in surrounding enemies. Attacks against a rooted enemy are granted a 2x damage multiplier, and if the enemy dies before the field expires, it'll create a radial explosion, dealing 2x the damage it absorbed. So if you didn't catch it, there is the aha moment. Enemy damage increases as levels increase, which means that the damage that Magnetize does will also increase along with that. And since the field is duration based, there isn't really a cap on how much damage it can absorb. In addition, regardless of what level the enemies are, they're not going to be able to shoot through that bubble. So while Polarize has lost its scaling, Magnetize carries a similar effect. But instead of scaling off of enemy shielding, it scales off of enemy damage, allowing it to be a bit more flexible against non-shielded factions. And instead of being pressed 2 to win, it's turned itself into a defensive time bomb. Now, as for the snapshot, I've gone ahead and added in 4 Forma, 1 V slot, and 2 D slots, and swapped the polarity over to a dash. And as for the build, as you can see, aside from the standard efficiency mods, we've invested several slots into power strength as well as range, even sacrificing one of our usual survivability mods. Aside from that, we've added in a bit of duration to slightly offset the drain the other mods have put on it. Now, there are other feasible variations, juggling around drift mods and standard mods to create a different mix of duration, strength, and range. However, this is what I like playing with the most. Now, as for tips and tricks, the biggest thing about the rework is her change in playstyle. The first thing you're going to have to learn is how to get used to using Magnetize as if it were one of Volt's shields, making sure to keep a bubble in between you and incoming enemy fire. Once you've mastered that, it's all about improving your reaction time. While a single bubble can usually wrangle in most ranged units, melee and other close range enemies will easily dash through and take you by surprise. Now, this becomes less of an issue when you're able to cast multiple bubbles, but when one of your fields has enough damage racked up, it will shred through most units fairly quickly, making it difficult to cast a second bubble within close proximity. So, along with melee units, keep an eye out for approaching enemies that you can tag, making it much more difficult for other enemies to rush you. Lastly, and most importantly, is your weaponry. Now, a lot of us have seen the way it performs with Alanka, so clearly that's an amazing choice. However, also keep in mind that there is some sort of weird mechanic that allows beam weapons to supercharge each field, which strangely enough, the Alanka doesn't do, regardless of its capability of naming enemies. As you can see here, although it's massacred almost all of these gunners with a single pull of the trigger, the amount of damage the Magnetized field does per tick is quite low, about 30 to 50, and its radial explosion only deals 6 to 10k. However, with the Atmos, while it takes about a clip and a half to take out the Magnetized target, it's dealing 5 to 7,000 points of damage per second to level 140 armored units, and its radial explosion at the epicenter deals over 1 million points of damage, with those further out seeing up to 500,000. So, TLDR, the Lanka is amazing at taking out targets inside the bubble, while continuous fire weapons are great at supercharging the field to take out incoming enemies and deal a devastating radial blast. Now, in closing, I'm gonna say this. As with the Siren rework, this was definitely a big change in Mag's playstyle. However, after a bit of playtesting and studying the mechanics, I have to say that she's actually better off. She's more effective at taking down multiple factions, she can solo high-end escalating survivals with more ease than she previously could, and when used with a team that understands her potential, she can create safe zones and deal insane amounts of damage at the same time. So let me be frank with you. I get it if you like the old shield polarized, but let's face it, DE is moving away from this press one button and everything dies instantly with zero added effort abilities. If that upsets you, play lower tier missions so you can feel godlike. Or maybe just leave, so that the rest of us don't have to hear you moaning. The future of Warframe is engaging gameplay, and DE seems to be trying to find a way to keep damage-based Warframes relevant in endgame by adding in effects that make you work for that epic room-clearing explosion. Because let's face it, if you don't want to work and you don't want to be engaged, then maybe you're not good enough for this relationship. Why don't you go find some other cheap floozy to play with, because we got standards, boo-boo. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Snapshot. If you're in need of a bit of a consolation, check out my editorial on why you should love nothing. Or if you want something a bit more lighthearted, watch me open loot cases totally trashed and drunk dial my mama. Now, don't forget to do all the things that I ask you to do at the end of every one of these. And as always, stay tuned for more on the laws of attraction here at A Gay Guy Plays.